This is the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast, hosted by Joe Yule. Each new moon, we'll explore with our guests how to think globally and act locally with ecofeminism. Awaken all your senses. The spirit of the witches comes to your ears. The Sabbath is that way. Gang of
Welcome back to the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast. And we created this series during a time when Ibiza was essentially sleeping, tourism was off the table and borders were closed. We have spoken so many times with our guests over the last 18 episodes about what the dream modality or economy of what the island could look like would be. In January, we discussed the SDG or Sustainable Development Goals with Inma Saranova, Director of Ibiza Preservation, about exactly what we need to do to progress towards the 17 initiatives in Ibiza that have been adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. At their heart, the 17 goals are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. They recognise that ending poverty and deprivation must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reduce inequality and spur economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our land and sea ecosystems, and they must be reached by 2030, which is quite a tall order, as I'm sure you'll agree, especially after the last few years. And through this conversation, it emerged that we are lagging behind in some areas. But what came to my attention when I spoke with this week's guest, Marina Ponti, the UN director of the SDG campaign, when she visited Ibiza, was that instead of stamping out what we have right now, we must embrace the opportunities that lie right in front of us. I spoke to Marina shortly after she gave a speech at the recent International Music Summit earlier this month. Marina, thank you so much for those words of optimism in your keynote speech there here at the IMS. It felt like a hugely powerful and inspiring talk. And I think there's really a lot of work to be done in Ibiza to work towards the 17 SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. I wonder, can you tell us to start with what, made you or kind of like compelled you to attend the IMS this year?
Thank you. Very simply, I really believe in the power of music. The power of music to inspire people to make a change in their life, but also the power of the music industry to lead by example and changing the business model, because there is a lot that the music industry can also do to change its business model, to become more sustainable, to promote more gender equality on and off stage, and also to protect women and gender minority. So music can really help to trigger change and to multiply. And lastly, music is a universal language, and we live in a world where they're trying to divide us, and music can unite us. We need to flip the script from divisiveness into togetherness, from apathy into action, from fear into hope. And music can help us, because people change. We've seen with the pandemic, we can change our behavior, we can change the way we do things in all sectors, and change can happen very quickly. But change not only happens because of the fact that we read. Change happens when we are touched, our emotion. And music can speak to our minds, but also to our hearts. And when minds and hearts come together, here change is possible.
You obviously have some experience of that. Like, what music touches your heart in that way?
there are many songs, in my life. For instance, one song with really inspired me was "Stand Up for Your Right." And many years ago, I've rolled out a campaign globally, playing that "Stand Up for Your Right" song at the same time all over the world. I believe in the symbolic, power of music, and in this synchronized action. So music can be played at the same time, at the same moment, everywhere, conveying a message that we are far away, but we are sharing the same vision, the same hopes, the same fears, the same planet.
I think that's beautiful for you to clarify like that. And I think you also spoke of art also triggering the same reaction. And I think it's a very interesting topic for a place like Ibiza where, the number one reason that I reside here and I've moved, away from my home country like you have is the nature. It's just so incredibly beautiful here. In the last few years, we've had a rest from the normal narrative of what this beautiful event here, at the IMS brings to the island, which is, of course, electronic dance music. And I think a lot of people are interested in what will happen this summer because obviously ecology, the island had a lot of chance to rest and to recover from many years of a lot of tourists coming here. So I think some people feel like this is a very positive thing after what we've just been through to have music coming back, and some people feel less so. Which is why it's nice to hear your opinion.
I think what we need to do is to learn from what we've gone through. So the pandemic was dramatic. I mean, it still is. We're not over. I mean, now there is a war, which is even worse. But the pandemic taught us some lessons about priorities in our life, about the quality of our life, of our relationship, of our planet, and somehow, when we are now going back to normality, we should learn from the pandemic and do things differently. And we now have an opportunity because many things were stopped. We are now re-engineering how to restart, and things need to restart, but can start in a different way because we kind of, now there's a new baseline. So we didn't do many things for 2 years. So we can now be really creative. And the music industry, because of the creativity of art and music, can be creative and find ways in which you can have fun, have joy, you can share, you can dance. But at the same time, you can respect the planet, you can respect gender, you can include people, you can, absolutely be zero tolerance for violence, harassment. So you can do things differently. And I'm particularly interested in a little bit challenging the music sector to use the opportunity of this new begin to reset, to reimagine. All models have not worked. We need new ones. And we can be the one rewriting the rules.
So where do we re-begin?
Change can start from everywhere. So everyone can, can choose by the way, we live, we eat, we travel, we work, we consume, we vote, we include or exclude people in our life, we listen. So there's so many actions that we can take that show that we want to live in a different way. We should consume less, better, making sure the product we use are made in a sustainable way, but at the same time that the labor that behind those products, the people were paid with dignity. We can travel less and maybe better, and actually spend more time when we travel to really get to know the local community, the local languages, the local food. We can, choose to reward, companies or artists or producer or venues that choose to abolish plastic or choose to protect, if it's in the evening, safe ride, or protect women, or actually reward events that have gender equality on stage, that actually give a space to artists from different geography and different sectors. So the sector can change, can start changing, but also people who are following and who are attending this event can also ask that this event are done differently. So there are two ways in which you can choose. With this experience, we recently nominated an Italian artist, Elisa, as one of our ally. She, after 2 years of the pandemic, she's doing a live tour for the first time after the pandemic, and she chose to do it totally differently, to be very sustainable, reducing, truck transportation. She chose not only to go to the big city, but to go in each region of Italy, to allow inclusivity and to bring, culture, music everywhere, even to the poorest areas. She is trying to use less, electric power, and maybe using location like on the mountains, where you can have a beautiful scenery and have a show in the middle of the day that doesn't require lights. So change is happening, and it will be up to the followers who also to start demanding more and more that when they go to a concert, they also want to see respected their social and climate justice belief.
Absolutely. I think that's very inspiring, and there's definitely an opportunity. I think, Brian Eno, who we've been hosting some talks with today over in the Eco Lounge here at the International Music Summit, has a charity called Earth Percent, and one of the the major things that he talks about is this climate opportunity. Everyone refers to it as a climate crisis and a bit of a disaster, really, in this very kind of doomsday kind of talk. And what you said about inspiring hope is really, really important to this conversation, because drumming home that narrative is not helpful to anyone. No one gets inspired to make change by being told it's too late. We need to really come at it from a very optimistic perspective.
Yes, I think it's important to have hope, because we see change and we see people struggling and making change even in very difficult setting, and we need to be hopeful also for them, and we need to push for change and be very persistent, and somehow we need to think of ourselves, think of our planet, think of the future. We need to look at the future, and we need to look at our legacy for the future generation. And it's really about coming together and really feeling, we are one humanity, we share one planet, and we've seen in history, change starts with one person, with one idea. I was saying in my speech, with one dreamer, and then it's this butterfly effect, this domino effect that then can be triggered, and we've seen change happen very quickly. And so it is possible. It is possible when people, believe in it, and they're very passionate, and put their minds and their hearts to it.
You clearly have plenty of that, enough for all of us, Marina, which is good news, basically. And I think, I really like the idea that purpose is behind the theme of this year's IMS, because I feel like, in the past, there's been a bit of a lack of kind of female equality in the DJ world and the dance music world. And there's been, you know, some sexual harassment, as we were hearing in the talk before you with Jaguar. And yeah, there's been a bit of a few gender issues, and there's also been mental health issues, and there've been, you know, like a real lack of awareness, I think, on wellness in the music industry. And it wasn't until Avicii died, for example, a very famous DJ, that suddenly this storyline came to the fore. So I was so happy to see climate change really, you know, pushing through to become the focus this year, because I think, you know, as the years have gone on with International Music Summit, the storylines keep changing, and I think that's so important for it to evolve and not stagnate.
Gender equality is critical. I mean, we cannot think about progress when more than half of the population of our globe is not given the opportunity and the dignity, you know, to live. So the gender discrimination and gender violence or harassment that you see in the music, you know, electronic music system, but it's across society. So there are not enough women in power, in governments, in parliaments, women as CEO, artists. So there is really a long way to go, but we are making progress. At the same time, as you mentioned, the pandemic, what did very negatively, it kind of increased very starkly violence against women. Because of the lockdown, many families were confined in very small homes, and that triggered an increased violence against women, which is something the music industry, you know, should be more loud about. Everyone should be more loud about. But gender equality is fundamental. You know, we cannot achieve climate or our, you know, fighting other inequalities or health or education or fighting against poverty or hunger if we don't tackle gender equality. And we don't ensure that half of the population of our planet is given the same opportunities.
Interesting then that Elon Musk has just dropped 44 billion on buying Twitter rather than putting anything back into the world.
Yes, I mean, one of the key issues that we're confronted is the raising of inequalities. So we cannot say, and nobody can say, oh, we don't have the money. I mean, there are the resources, we have the funding. It's just the distribution mechanism are not working. So there are people who are increasingly, you know, becoming more billionaire, trillionaire, and there is a staggering majority of the population which is growing poorer and poorer, and are not given the opportunity to actually enjoy, you know, the benefit. So we're going into society that are increasingly unequal, polarized, and we need to put in place mechanisms that help redistribution.
I mean, how do you even begin? Like, some of your goals are quite, you know, big goals. And I mean, you've only got 8 years to go. I mean, what's the kind of, you know, how optimistic are you that we're going to reach those 17 quite, you know, beautiful ideas by 2030?
Well, we had the pandemic, we have a conflict happening now in Europe. So some of those goals, we're actually not making progress. But as you said before, when there's a challenge, there's always an opportunity. And the opportunity there is now is that because we had to stop in many areas, in mobility, in jobs, in energy, in many policy. Now policymakers from the public and the private sector are back at the drawing board to redesign jobs, training, education, and there is a moment in which new policy, a new idea can actually happen because there is a space. Before the pandemic, many people were saying things are going okay. Actually, change was more difficult then because there was an assumption that we were going on the right direction, that there was no need to change. Now, clear ahead of us, in front of us. The increasing inequality, the climate urgency, conflict, we need to change. And that, to me, is an opportunity that we can really use to make a difference. But then it takes each one of us. Leaders, individual, consumer, producer, artist, civil society, religious leader, feminist, activist, philanthropic community. It's possible.
You immerse in this storyline continuously. That's your job. You are head of this SDG Climate Campaign? Action Campaign. And, that's no small task. You must be rallying the troops of many, many people. How do you remain optimistic when that is your world and you're obviously trying to inspire teams of people on a daily basis to keep the vibe high?
I'm inspired by people. Sometimes I get less optimistic because of what I see around me. But then I meet somebody, maybe in Rwanda, a young rapper, a woman who's using rap to change perception on what women can aspire to do in their community. So fighting, stereotypes and actually changing the culture around what women can do and what role they can play in society. And these examples happen, these stories happen every day, pop up in every country. And when I see these stories, I really feel very humble. And I said, who am I not to be optimistic when these people can make a difference in very difficult situation and can really use creativity, culture to change. And change also starts by perception, by cultural norm, by changing the belief of what's right and what's wrong. And one aspect that makes me optimistic is the new generation. Not my generation, the younger generation are way more committed to sustainability than my generation. And I believe they'll be tougher on businesses, on sector that don't change their business model. They'll be rewarding those who are changing, and they will be sending out of business those who don't want to rewrite the rules.
What woman was it that inspired you to decide, right, I'm going to go and work for the UN, I'm going to leave Italy, I'm going to go and live in Germany, and I want to run this team, I want to run this campaign?
Well, I was very, very fortunate to have my several bosses who were women and who really inspire me, really empower me to grow professionally. But something that really made a difference was when I just started, after a few years at the UN, I actually became pregnant, and which is a positive factor, but as you know well, it's, when you need to tell your boss or, that you're pregnant, it's often perceived as, you're delivering a very bad news, and actually it's very counterproductive to your career. And my boss, who had an amazing career herself and never a child because, she sacrificed that, I knew that I would created her problem. And she said she was so genuinely so happy for me, and she cherished, what happened to me. And she told me, gender, equality, gender empowerment is not just a rhetoric. It's me being very happy that you can fulfill your motherhood and at the same time, have a career. And she said, I'll do whatever I can to, take up your responsibility. Wow. and this is how gender equality works. And that, to me, was really the trigger about you preach, but at the same time is who you are every day that can really inspire more than the speech that you make. And that, for me, was a turning point.
Once upon a time in Ibiza
with Alex Gray.
The muse, the lover, I want to dance with you, held together like a melodic glue. Sometimes I feel like throwing my hands up in the air. I know I can count on you. A gentle whisper as I fly through my dreams, a beckon, a call to Graceland. Yet I arrive in an electronic garden of Eden, gathering round the scaping sound, the melody of freedom. We dance, we trance. I expand my wings, I engage my fight, 'cause it's my right to. Music makers, disco shakers, slowly awaken to the realization. Cover me with your love, an avalanche of promises fly above the white dove. I want to rock with you. Weave the wisdom into our bodies as we discover a grace in raising the vibration to stand united and in place. The consciousness of curiousness, we are open to your tune, our hands in the air, our feet on the sand, worshipping you as the sun, as the moon. Life-loving feelings, open hearts, how can you curate a dignity that will help this sweet garden last? A wonderland so mystical we dine on all its fruits, drinking the sweet nectar as and when it suits us. The shimmering glow of the disco ball, the laser lights on the ceiling, embellish our souls with diamonds and pearls. We give our arms and our legs for the feeling. Music makes me lose control. I escape the false truth of my being. Yet, through the fog of the lie, there is a hope that I am seeing. Here we all stand, woman, man, together we can change the corporate plan. What would it all look like? The pre-production bustle, an eco-conscious ritual for the DJ nightclub hustle. Let's stay away with the ill behavior. Let's create a culture to savor. Renegade Master, Grandmaster Flash, White Lines, Blue Monday, Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash. Techno, psytrance, acoustic folk, hard house disco. Legends no longer sleeping from their slumber they've awoke. Play a record without a scratch. Dance, sing a new plan we will hatch. Power to the people, we are looking to you. You've got the love to see this through.
I think it's interesting, in terms of, you talked about gender equality in your speech, and you made it very clear, I suppose, that maybe there is, an imbalance in this storyline of the climate. We see, Mother Earth is kind of suffering, and there are kind of indigenous communities and that are not being heard. There is no equality really, with particularly the fights that are going on at the moment in Brazil and the protests that are happening. And it feels like, specifically indigenous communities are most affected and in charge of, the majority of the biodiversity. So I think it's kind of interesting to kind of look at it from that angle of how do we empower women in those communities who feel very unheard to get their voices out there?
I think we can all start to listen and change the way we communicate and really give the space to others. And we can start doing it in our profession. You are a journalist and you can already include different voices. Sometimes are indigenous people, sometimes are marginalized community that live next door to you. It's about giving a value to diversity, to different perspective, and to show the richness. We are, we're very different, all of us, but then is a mosaic that actually brings us together, and we need that diversity to really, flourish. So it's about rewarding diversity, diverse perspective, and to fight for a different opinion, even if you don't agree with, and to fight for the space of a debate where we can disagree, but we nurture and value the opportunity of others to express their views. I think we're losing that. We're becoming very loud, and the loudest wins, and we're losing patience. We don't have the time to listen, and that helps of really losing the space for enjoying and for listening and to giving real weight to different perspectives. So I think we need to revalue, listening to different, voice and giving that space.
Who was the first person that allowed you to find your voice in that way?
Well, I remember I was, many years ago, I was working for a civil society organization, and I was campaigning for the Tobin tax, financial transaction tax. And I spoke at the UN. I went to New York. There was a big conference, and I was speaking at a side event. And then a senior leader of the UN heard my speech, and he told me, I need to bring you to the UN. You need to say this in front of government, because they really need to hear. And that moment of being allowed to say something which was very unconventional and that created some tension, show me that you can be a bridge and you can really create that space, whoever you are, and really bring new voices and different perspective, so that people can think and maybe can find different solution.
I think that's very interesting, because my next question was going to be like, what challenges have you faced as a woman specifically, on this rise to where you've gotten to now, to be kind of head of the campaign? There must have been a few little battles, as you kind of alluded to, some personal battles along the way.
Yes, in every sector, women are not expected to lead, and many times you're not taken too seriously because you're a woman. And I fight. I mean, if I don't agree, I can be very forceful, but in a gentle way, and that's often seen as okay. She doesn't get upset, and you're not taken seriously because you have a different way to convey your arguments. And I think we're used to a society where, again, the loudest, the more aggressive wins. And sometimes respect is associated with the amount of aggressiveness or the amount of loud, how loud you can be. And I don't want to pursue that stereotype. I want to pursue a leadership style which is, true to what I believe in, but in a different way. And it's not easy.
I can imagine. I mean, I'm very humbled to be sitting opposite you here having this conversation, but I can imagine this has not come without a bit of a price at some point in the past. And I think that's just an interesting thing to acknowledge, because I think, things are always a struggle at times. We've talked a little bit on this podcast with the director of the Ibiza Preservation, Inma Saranova, about the 17 SDGs. And I think, obviously we're not going to go into all of them. There's quite a few. But, what would you say is the main kind of focus that you're working towards right now? What's the top priority?
To me, the key, there are 3 goals that are cross-cutting. So by tackling those, you can achieve a lot of progress on all the others. One is inequalities. We need to really reform our systems. The distribution of resources, opportunity must be, reformed heavily. The second is gender. Gender discrimination. We should really put in place, policy, incentive, and really change when it's a policy, but also the cultural mindset of people. And this is where music can help. And then climate. Climate, which is, of course, climate change, there's a lot of visibility, but it's a little bit broader. It's about protecting the environment, protecting the planet which we inherit and which we should preserve for future generation and for our own generation. So it also includes biodiversity and really protecting the land, the ocean, and the air. Where we breathe, where we live, we depend, the food we grow, it all depends. So this fact that we need to, make peace with our planet and with nature, but also with people.
I think we've also talked a little bit, you say in at number 3, if you put it that way, is the climate change story. And I think, as we touched on at the beginning, it's so important for that to be talked about here. And the fact that you're even here is kind of amazing, as Ben said as well, Ben Turner, the co-founder of IMS. And I think, specifically, I would love to know what you've kind of heard about Ibiza, because obviously it is an island that's known for certain characteristics, but this is kind of like a storyline or a narrative that's painted about Ibiza, and actually it's not necessarily, true. Obviously, clearly there's some parties that happen here, but that's not, the whole story of the island. So what's been your perception of Ibiza so far?
Well, I just arrived this morning, and of course, Ibiza has a reputation that I've known. I've also heard from many people that there are like 2 sides to the island. There is a side that is loud and it's very crowded, and there's a lot of music and alcohol involved, and perhaps sexual harassment included. But there is also a very peaceful and very green and very beautiful part of the island. So I think every location, we should really try not to put stereotype to location, because every, this is just an island. It depends on people, what they want to do, how they want to behave. It's not the island that's the problem, is how people from other part of the world, how they choose to behave when they come into Ibiza or to another destination. So I think I feel for Ibiza, because she's carrying the weight of a reputation of probably people who are not from Ibiza. So we need to rethink that.
I think the narrative needs to be reset, and that's why I think this occasion, specifically you being here and some, the other climate activists, that's why it feels, really, really poignant for me to be having this conversation at the IMS. I never really believed this day would come.
I'm also very hopeful. I mean, it's to see the kind of people that were listening to my statement, that are engaging in other workshops on climate, on sustainability, on mental health. I could really see that many people are asking the right question, want to change. I mean, they may not know exactly how the change will look like, or they don't know how to, but that's easy. They are asking questions, and I could sense a feeling that things, we cannot continue business as usual. So some change is necessary. And it's not just the planet, it's not just the environment that is reminding us, it's also the community. So I think the industry, like many other industries, are changing, and not only because CEO are inspired, by these goals, but because they feel that if they still want to have a market share in the future, they'll need to change the way they do business. And I really feel hopeful, because I feel that these industries also understanding that their community, particularly young people, may enjoy dance, electronic, and music, but they are also increasingly concerned and committed to protect the environment and to fight inequality. So they know they need to adapt to a different world.
Interesting you say that, because I think, I also interviewed Ben as well, and we talked about this idea that, Ibiza have obviously suffered deeply with the economy, obviously storyline being completely changed in the last few years. And I think it's, put an emphasis and a realization perhaps on the fact that this type of tourism is kind of needed until another kind of tourism is reinvented, which I think is also important, that there needs to be more ecotourism and a focus on people connecting to the land and the sea in different ways that they don't do when they just come here and spend the weekend or a week in a nightclub. But, I think, as you said, there are opportunities to re-begin and think about the ways that can be changed. But one thing I'm not sure that can be changed, or that I don't think is going to happen that soon, is just the way the DJ world is. When they obviously reach a certain point in their career, they need to go to all these different places in like one weekend or one night to make the maximum amount of money. And this private jet story comes into play, which is incredibly sad, really, for an island like this one particularly. There's a lot of traffic in that department, as you say. It's an inequality again of an ill distribution of wealth for some people to be able to do that, to enable their career, and other people clearly can't.
Exactly. I mean, it's about having more opportunity for more people. It's about more equal access to those opportunity, and it's about giving more visibility to the smaller DJ, to the smaller artists, to the local VJ. Sometimes also the tourism sector should try to promote local artists, local DJ that can produce music, dance music, can have fantastic party without having to fly from one location to the other continuously. So it's also about changing, not necessarily changing music or reducing music, but it's changing how the music is produced and who delivers the music and how. So you have the same effect. You want to have people to enjoy music, you want people to really be happy and to share a moment to dance, which is about connection. But then there are other things that you can change, where the DJ come, and then if it's, to have more gender equality also in the DJ world, and also to be more mindful of the location or plastic use, or also safety. Is it safe for women or for gender minority to then come home? Are we creating situations that are potentially at risk, putting people and women at risk of violence? So it's about considering the all events in a different way, and being more thoughtful and understand the implication, the trade-off, which again, I'm optimistic because of the pandemic. I think in the past many people said, I want to support the environment, and they said, okay, I just need to create green jobs and build an electronic car. And then other people say, okay, gender equality, I just have to give more jobs to women. Everybody was working in silos. We saw with the pandemic that silos approach doesn't work, and health crisis became in one day a mobility crisis, a gender violence crisis, an education crisis, a job crisis, an economic crisis. So people understand now the complexity of our society, and people understand that to do things to respond to the complexity takes trade-off okay, I create more green jobs, but then who are those jobs for? Men or women? So every industry leader and sector should start looking at the complexity and start testing solution that, okay, I want to be more sustainable, but I also want to promote more social justice, which is also gender equality. I also want to protect women or gender minority. I want to make sure that they enjoy the event I'm organizing and they feel safe coming to the event, during the event, and coming home after the event. I want to make sure there's no waste of food, there's no plastic, I'm not destroying the environment I'm using, for the event. And this takes testing, this takes making mistake, which is normal. When we're changing, we need to test new approaches and we need to do things right and make a mistake and then improve and adjust.
I think, many mistakes have been made on Ibiza, and I want to end on a positive note. And obviously we've talked about some of those themes already. I think something we've spoken about a lot on the podcast is eco-anxiety, which I think a lot of the younger generation, particularly people probably coming to an event like this, will be perhaps suffering from, or it's at least entered their thoughts at some point in the not too distant past. And I wonder if maybe there's some kind of message you could share, or some advice, or maybe a moment of optimism that we could finish this podcast with, because I feel, as I said before, there's a lot of doom and gloom in this world and focus on that, whereas actually we've said there's an opportunity here for change.
Yes, I think people should really reconnect with themselves. I think in the pandemic we talked a lot, which we should not lose, about mental health, about well-being, which is not just a fancy slogan. It means that our mental health is as important as our physical health. So we need to take care of our soul. We need to nurture ourselves, so then we can be a productive for our life, for our own life, but also to build a better future. So I think we need to include in the new narrative that we are rewriting the taking care of ourselves and giving us some peace, some time, some rest to really recuperate energy, because this is essential. If we want to make change, if we want to change the future, we need to be strong, and we need to feel that we can. We need to feel the space that we need to take care of ourselves and of our well-being. Otherwise, we will not be able to help others. So I think a lot of this anxiety is because people have suffered during the pandemic, and somehow they feel panic, they feel guilt, and they don't allow themselves to really take care of themselves, to then be a positive force for change. So I think we all need to give us this space for thinking about ourselves. It's not being selfish, it's not thinking about others. But if we are not strong, if we don't feel good, we will never be able to change. So I think giving us the space and the permission to really cultivate our well-being and to nurture our soul, and that will give us the strength, the persistence, the patience that we need.
Marina Ponti, thank you so much for joining us here on the Gang of Witches Ibiza podcast.
It was fantastic spending time with you, and it was very peaceful. So I think we are changing the Ibiza narrative starting now with this conversation. Thank you.
It was the Ibiza podcast of Gang of Witches, hosted by Joe Yule. See you at the next new moon.
Until then, take care of yourselves.
Calling upon my witches everywhere, my witches everywhere. I'm calling upon my sisters everywhere, my brothers everywhere. The time has come together. We are stronger.